Hi. Let's remove this. Here. Hi, I'm Maria. You may remember me from previous talks. I work at OSGeo-PT, which is a main sponsor of OSGeo. And, well, we work mainly with open source software. I think 90% of what we do is open source. And the parts that are not open source are probably not open source because they are related to ArcGIS, so it's more difficult to work in open source there. But we believe in open source. We want to offer our customers open source. We understand the importance of not having vendor lock-in, of sharing all the collaborations between different companies, between different entities, between different organizations. But it's true that sometimes when you are a business and you sell open source, there are some complexities, some difficulties that are not that easy to sell to a customer, especially if they are not used to open source. But even if they know what open source is and they understand the importance, sometimes it's a bit difficult to sell them directly the open source version. So some companies, you probably have seen this if you have looked a bit at our ecosystem of companies and what they offer. Many companies offer what is called like an enterprise version of the open source product. And, well, each company has their own definition. Some companies think, for example, we just saw that degree, some companies are offering a degree enterprise version. And every company or every entity has a different version about what an enterprise, a different definition of what an enterprise version is. Something that it must be something very different from the open source version, like taking the open source as the core and then building a lot of stuff around it. Some other companies think that it should be not a fork or not something very difficult, because every time you add new things on top of the open source version, you get vendor lock-in somehow. So I'm going to tell you what we have discussed inside OSGeo-PT about what the enterprise version of an open source may be, how we can offer our customers things like that are still open source and have all the 4 freedoms of open source and don't have a vendor lock-in, but offer something that is not just download that version from the repository and run it. So the first thing is, why do we need an enterprise version? We can sell the community version. It's perfect because there's a lot of maintainers, it has a lot of features, advancing is, why should we have an enterprise version? Why add this definition if we are so open source? So first thing, open source is wild. So you never know when, you can have roadmaps, you can have planification, you can have anything, but you never know when someone is going to have this fancy new feature or this bug fix is going to be finished and merged into the code. So even if you plan a lot, open source is wild because there's a lot of different entities and each entity is trying to drag that open source software in their direction with their goals, with their needs. And maybe that software is not going in the direction you want or at the speed you want on that direction. So open source is kind of wild, and that's not something that customers usually like. They want predictability. They want to know what is coming or what they should expect. As I said, there's multiple teams. You have no power over the other teams. They can do anything. They can, maybe there's some company in Europe building a lot of Inspire stuff. And the Australian government, they are using, for example, UNetwork. And they say, okay, but all this Inspire stuff, this is trash for me. I want to see other kind of things. So each team is pushing on their own way and at their direction. You can have a lot of planification and say, okay, then OSGeo-PT will finish this bug fix for this version, and your solution is going to fix this other thing, and Camp to Camp is going to add this new feature. But then maybe that company or that team internally decide that it's not what they need, because they need to push in another direction at some point, and then it breaks the roadmap, and it's perfectly understandable. So it's really wild. The roadmap is weak because it doesn't matter how much you plan, you cannot control what other people are doing inside the community because it's how it works. And where does each feature go? So should we wait for this to be really, really stable and wait 3 versions to have this feature on the main software? Or should we be a bit more quickly, a bit unstable, but have already this feature on the next version and have people already use it and reporting bugs? When should we add these new features? Is this book something really urgent that needs to be fixed now and do a patch release now? Or can we wait like 2 months and add a batch of book fixes? These kind of questions are the kind of things that maybe a customer wants to have more stable, not depend only on the open source community, which has its own interests. And also, many things are volunteer driven. So the deadlines are weak because maybe someone promised something, but it's on their free time, and then they decide that they want to use their free time for sleeping. You cannot say, oh, you promised me this. Well, you can say, you promised me you will finish this, but you cannot be angry at that person. You cannot do anything legal against that person because they didn't finish what they promised. For example, in many projects, like GeoNetwork is a very good example of this, all the developments are driven by customers. If there is no one paying for something, that something is not being done. There is almost no volunteer or free time work done there. So, and each customer can change their mind and say, okay, I'm going to give money for this feature. And then they change their mind, and all the community expected that, and then suddenly it's not there, or it's delayed 1 year for budget, blah, 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 paperwork, and that's it. That's how it is. So the open source community is great if you look it from from some distance and you are not in a hurry of having features or bug fixings now in the stable version. But if you look more closely, it's a bit unpredictable. So what does customer wants? I already said it, predictability. They want to know a fixed roadmap. If you are the only company doing work on some software, then the roadmap is very clear. May have some modifications, but if you promise something, it's you who are doing it. There's no other external team doing that, and you mention that to your customer, okay, you can expect this to come. No, you are the one that are handling this. In open source, the predictability is not like that. Customers also want stability. So if someone introduces a new feature, they expect it to be stable and not experimental, or something that at least is stable on their use case. No bizarre new features, no weird new features. So like the example I put with the Australian government, all these Inspire things that may break things outside of Inspire world. A customer that is not using Inspire, it's not just that it's trash for them, all these buttons that don't mean anything, but also it may break their use cases because now you have to validate using Inspire, blah, blah, blah. No, I don't have an Inspire, I don't care about this. They also want easy upgrades, so no weird stuff when moving to a new version. But they still want to use open source, especially the ones who understand what open source is, what are the 4 freedoms, all these things that you already know, or should know if you're here. Like, okay, I want to be able to do my own modifications, I want to be able to share these things with the other department, I want to be able to audit the source code, etc. So how can we merge these 2 different worlds? That's where we think the enterprise version comes in. So we try to focus on audit stuff and test stuff. So we know our customers, we know what they want exactly, we know their use cases, so we can guarantee that the open source version, or at least the open source version we are offering to them with the enterprise level is audited and well tested, and is going to work well on their use cases. If they want some fancy new feature that the community is delaying for a later version, we can say, okay, but this fancy new feature, we think it's interesting for our customers. We can offer you this version that is exactly the same as the open source code, but we're going to cherry pick and backport, no, it will be like forward port, these interesting fancy new features or these bug fixes that help in your... So the idea is not to do a fork, is not to deviate a lot from open source, but just try to cherry pick all the good things that may not be exactly on this version if that user just download the thing from the website. We also try to do a more clear and stable roadmap, so we know exactly what we are promising. For example, we think that for the GeoNetwork Enterprise version we are offering, we are going to be a bit delayed from the official version. So if 3.6.0 comes out, we are not going to offer the enterprise version the day after, but we're going to say, okay, we are going to offer this maybe 2-3 months later. It may look a lot of time, but in that time, we are going to make sure this goes exactly right for your use case. So they have like a seal of warranty that this is going to work, not only trusting the community, but another audit afterwards. Of course, another thing that is very interesting for an enterprise version is really know the source code, really know what is going on, not just saying, okay, I give support for GeoServer, but I have no idea what is going on GeoServer. I just say, okay, I'm going to install you the latest version. And then suddenly, hey, this is broken. What's happening? Oh, I don't know. I have to start by checking how this works inside. No, we know exactly what we are selling. If we put the enterprise stamp, it means that if there is some bug, we know where to look. If there is some new feature you want, we know where to implement it. We know how to do it. So the technical support should be faster on an enterprise version. It's not just, okay, I know the source code is posted somewhere, so I'm going to start looking where this bug fix is. No, and every new feature that gets introduced, we check how it works, we make sure we know how it works, so if it fails, we know where should be the bug, or at least we can hunt it better. And still use the open source version. We don't want to deviate, we don't want to fork, we don't want to put a lot of fancy modules or plugins or extensions around it, so it creates a vendor lock-in. If someone hires us, buys our enterprise version, however you call it, and then in 2 years' time they say, okay, but I think GeoSolution is offering a better price, or I like them better because they speak in Italian, whatever. Then that's fine. There is no vendor lock-in. You can move. And if in 2 years you can come back, you want to come back, you can come back. That's no problem. It's fine. So how do we do this? Because this sounds very good. You are going to offer the open source version, but with a lot of better support, call, and anything. How do you do it? Testing a lot, sure. So we know exactly what we are not. Maybe GeoNetwork works with 5 different database types. Okay, we are going to guarantee you that it works in these 3. We are not going to check if it still works unless a customer asks, of course. But we are going to guarantee you that on these environments exactly it is going to work. If you move outside that, we can help you. But at least we guarantee that this works. And this use case we have discussed, it works. Sometimes we will be some minor version behind because we want to test before putting the level enterprise and making sure this is really working. Test more, cherry pick some fancy features that may be of interest that will be delayed on the official version, so it's just making them a bit sooner. Warranty some environments, test again. Move customizations to configurations, so try to some customers think that they want a lot of fancy things and some customizations. We are moving the source codes into having those as checkboxes or things like that instead of doing all the work. So we try to lower the vendor locking as much as we can. Check all the commits. Maybe check each and every commit is a bit difficult if it's a very big project, but at least know exactly, watch what is going on in the source code. So if there is some bug, we know where to look for. We know how to do a good support and test. This also, if we are monitoring a lot all the changes in the code and we are very on top of what is going on in the community, we also, this makes all the custom things for customers, all the tailor needs things cheaper because we can do them better, advance and develop them going nearby the community instead of forking. We don't like forking. We don't want to deviate. We want to be as close to the open source version as we can. And if we can make this tailor thing inside this customization, inside the open source version, then that's better because probably someone wants it. Just make it enable and disable by a setting. And of course, there will be less bug reports because we have tested a lot on the use case we know our users use. So this is more or less how we think an enterprise works. I think we should discuss more on the business-to-business meetings and maybe even on the main talks, roundtables, how business can run open source. This is our vision. This is what we offer, more or less. And if you have any questions, or
well, thank you very much for the nice presentation. I think it's a quite important topic to be discussed. So, are there any questions among the audience? So
She's my cat, in case.
Okay. Very
you are
nice.
Wondering.
So what you are doing is that you are doing a lot of testing and then you are stamping.
Yeah, making sure that, because sometimes the open source release, especially when maybe in QGIS is more difficult that big bugs just get introduced. But we have seen that sometimes GeoNetwork is very big. We are a very small team of developers. And sometimes if we go too fast, we break things we don't know we are breaking. So we are trying to improve in the testing, both in the community and then on our enterprise version. Okay. We think that's really important, to make sure if we cherry pick some fancy feature, it doesn't break anything, it's stable. Because that's what customers want in the end. They want software they can use.
Yeah, of course. Stability and yeah, absolutely. Any additional question? Okay, thank you very much.